It gives me great pleasure to introduce one of my colleagues at Manomet, Andy Whitman, who's going to be talking about adaptation from the perspective of the ground up, bottom up rather than top down. A lot of what we'll be talking about today is top down adaptation. It's important that we don't forget that there are local communities out there who are going to have to implement and live with the adaptation measures that regulatory authorities and planning agencies implement. So Andy is in charge of our Manomet's natural capital practice in Brunswick and Maine, and for a number of years now he's been working with local communities, particularly in forested landscapes, working with them on their perceptions of the landscape and what they get from the landscape, how forest products industry fits in with the landscape and local communities, and he's going to be talking about adaptation from the bottom up. Andy.
Thank you, Hector. Now, there's some special elements with bottom up with respect to climate change, and for New England, what we all recognize is there are important wildlife decisions that are made locally. And foremost in that is sort of home rule and local land use planning. Most of New England suffers from a lack of regional land use planning. But also in New England we have really a strong tradition of local land trusts. And you can think of those as other entities that are positioned to make decisions about wildlife and climate change. And then of course, we have large areas of landscapes that are dominated by private landowners. So the other thing in terms of climate change adaptation is that the doing bottom-up effort provides the opportunity to build local capacity. So people can begin to understand in their own terms what is climate change adaptation about. Not just for trying to manage the wildlife piece, but as other people begin to talk about, those other pieces we have to coordinate with the wildlife piece. Things like infrastructure, water resources, etc. And this all can lead to building public support at the local level, which rolls up to the regional and the state level for climate change adaptation. Local planning is going to face old and new challenges. The old ones are the same old, getting the plan work done and trying to do a decent job. And the new ones are having to deal with climate change resilient, building climate change resilient systems, resilient and resistant systems. And then when we're thinking in terms of local level climate change adaptation for wildlife, we must figure out, it's really, in my mind, it's not about climate change, it's about sustainability. And if we're going to lick, climate change adaptation, we got to just have more sustainable communities and integrate that triple bottom line. And then finally, we got to think in terms of it's not the bottom up, or the top down. It's this multi-scale bottom up and top down approaches that can be very complementary. But if they're not managed well, they can also be really dysfunctional. So I'll leave you with those points.